Rust effect with Iron B. We're going to show how to do a simple rust effect for prop making or faux finishing with the Iron B metal coating. Now the first thing we'll need to do with a styrofoam part is to prime it so it'll take this paint well. And we're using our new Prime It primer. This is a solvent-free primer, so it works well over EPS without dissolving it. Now we're putting this through an HVLP sprayer. That's probably the best way to apply this without too much issue. You can also brush this on. It's a simple primer to use, and it air dries pretty fast. In about 3 hours you typically have a paintable part. Now the first thing we're going to do to prepare our part to paint is we're going to decorate it with some bolts. This is actually a styrofoam part packing material out of my Mr. Coffee maker. So I thought this would be a good chance to illustrate taking a simple piece like this and making it look like a piece of rusted iron or cast steel. Now you want to stir up your primer and apply that to these bolt heads. Now these are some little resin bolts we cast up in some Easy Flow 60 resin. Polyurethane resin is a great way to make these little simple parts like this. You could use real bolts too, but a lot of times in prop making we want to keep the part as light as possible. So just some easy cast up bolts like this keep your part lightweight and fairly simple to paint. Now we want to let the primer dry for about 3 hours. Now the nice thing about the new Prime It primer is there's no window on it. As soon as it dries, you're ready to paint it, and you could wait 2 to 3 days or more to paint that, and the paint's still going to stick. A lot of primers have a window, a very narrow window, where paint will stick, and if you wait too long, the paint will not grab onto that primer. So keep that in mind. Depending on the primer you're using, you may need to pay attention to that window and make sure you're not waiting too long to apply the paint. Now we're applying the Iron B coating all over our styrofoam part here, and I usually start out by brushing or sponging on a coat all over my part. Now I'm brushing this with just mainly with the intent of just getting complete coverage, because as soon as we get total coverage over our part, I like to go back and stipple out the brush strokes, because we want this part to appear to be a rusted steel, and we don't want to give away the fact that this is a paint-on coating. So one of the ways we can do this is by texturing that surface and removing those brush strokes so it doesn't look like a painted-on coating. It looks intrinsic to the part. Now once that's stippled out, we want to leave it alone and let it dry. Now keep in mind your dry time for the metal coating is going to be different depending on the region you're in. If you're in Arizona, if you're in a hot, dry climate, it will be pretty fast, maybe even a few minutes. If you're in Florida, it may take a few hours. So keep that in mind. Dry time will be dependent on your humidity where you're working. Now the second coat, it's important that we are ready to apply our patina as soon as we get total coverage of our second coat, because the second coat we actually are going to spray on a reactive patina. So as soon as we get our coverage done with that second coat and get the brush stroke stippled out, we're going to apply our patina. So again, we want total coverage of that, and then stipple out the brush strokes. Now keep in mind you could also do 3 or 4 coats. 2 coats is usually sufficient to get a good coverage over a part. Now here again we're stippling out the brush strokes, and now ready to apply our reactive patina. Now we're going to use 2 patinas over this part. We're first going to apply the Tiffany Green patina. You could also use the light green patina. Now even though it's called green, actually it will create rust over iron and steel. So we're going to spray that onto the surface, and keep in mind, since this is a reactive patina, we're not painting the surface, we're actually creating a chemical reaction. So we want to spray on enough to get that reaction going, and then we want to leave it alone, because if we over apply it, we'll have way too much on there and it won't really give us the effect that we want. So spray it on, and you'll start to see a light brown start to form, kind of a reddish brown start to form when the reaction starts to take place. Now once we've sprayed on our Tiffany Green, we also want to spray on some of the tan patina. Now the tan is another reactive patina that just adds a little more character to our rust. It gives a little more variation, a little more yellows and oranges to our rust, and it gives more of a new rust look as opposed to an old, just brownish red rusted part. So this is kind of an optional step here, but it really does add a lot more character to the rust. Now the tan patina is a lot thicker than the Tiffany Green, so I usually transfer it to a spray bottle, and it's a good idea just to use a cheap disposable spray bottle for this step, because any of the acid patinas, any of the reactive patinas will destroy the spring in a spray bottle, so it'll only be good for just a couple of days when you're using an acid patina like this. Now I adjust that spray pattern to get what I want there. We don't want a stream, we want a light mist. And you can also apply this with a sponge if you just want that tan patina on some key areas. You'll see here in a minute when this patina starts to develop the different kind of effect you get with the tan versus just the straight Tiffany Green patina. Now once we've applied that over the top, again, we're not painting the surface, we're creating a chemical reaction. So we're going to step back and watch that patina develop. Now this is over the course of several hours. It's again going to depend on the humidity level where you're working. This part took about 8 hours to really develop a rich rust patina. Now here's our part after about 8 hours. Our finished rusted part is either ready to seal, or we can do some additional finishing on it. Now there's our tan patina. You see how we get a lot more orange and yellow going on where we applied that tan patina. Now one additional step I like to do just to add to the realism of the finished part is to dry brush a little bit of the silver B metal coating over some of the key areas that would naturally scuff in the handling of this part. And it just really punches up the realism, adds a lot of character to it, makes it look like there really is steel underneath the rust. And what you need to do is just go back in and dry brush a little bit of the silver on some of those areas where the part would naturally abrade. Just some of the edges, the tops of the bolts, any corners, any place where it would naturally scuff against maybe another metal part and expose some of that raw steel or iron underneath. Now once you've applied that, your part is finished, and again it's either ready for a sealer or you can leave it as is, and the color might change a little bit more in months to come. It will continue to react with the ambient moisture in the air and create additional rust, which is a lot of times referred to as a living patina. But if you like the color the way it is right now, as soon as it's dry to the touch, you can apply a coat of Smart Coat over the top to it and seal it, add a protective sealer that way, and that will keep the patina just like it is. Now for rusted parts like this, it's a good idea to use a matte sealer just to give it the appearance of a nice rusted part. And there you have a basic rust effect using Iron B metal coating and the Tiffany Green patina and the tan patina.